Novato, California on the 6th of April, 2020, talking to the lovely Rae Davies in Jacksonville, right?
Actually, I'm in Beverly Beach right now.
Near Jacksonville, though, right?
Yes, about an hour and 15 minutes south.
Oh,
So I'm right near the beach and the intercoastal.
wow.
It's lovely.
Yeah. Well, we go back, 14 years almost to the Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative,
Yeah,
isn't that?
that's right.
Where I first encountered you and a bunch of wild women. You were probably the wildest, though, so
Oh dear.
most memorable. And what I want to do today is I see you as a pioneer in this whole move towards normal birth that has been co-opted by the obstetrical industry. And I want to find out who you are and why. What led you to pursue this worthy goal and where you're going with it. So let's start with where you were born and family life, siblings,
Gosh.
uh,
Oh,
all that.
oh, that's going way back.
Yeah.
Well, I am Canadian,
Oh,
and yeah,
didn't know that.
yes, And but I've been in the States a long time, California for quite a while, and then I've now been in Florida for quite a while, which I love Florida. I can't get enough warmth, so I keep thinking, oh, I'll move further south. Although this has been pretty good here. And I had my first baby way long time ago. I don't even want to say, but it was a long time ago. And it was actually that birth that got me started in the birth industry. And I didn't know you were going to want to go that far back. I could actually show you that birth if you wanted.
Well, let's go back to your birth and what's your family business. I want to go right back to the beginning.
Oh, okay. Well, my mother had natural childbirth. I remember asking her at some point, what's it like to have a baby? And she said, it's the most wonderful thing that could ever happen to a woman. So that sort of set me off as far as having a good background, good thoughts
Yeah.
about birth.
Wow.
My mom had four, although her last birth was twins. So I remember her, I was the oldest, so I remember her coming home with twins. And she breastfed them all, and I remember all of that. And so yeah, no, that was that birth. So that set me off.
Where in
And
Canada was this? Did you grow up?
Vancouver.
Oh, okay, West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, her physician, who was a general practitioner, I believe, moved to California at one point, and I was pregnant when he moved, and I contacted him about being my provider. And I remember this was the beginning when they were just starting to let husbands in the delivery room. And I asked if I could asked him about having my husband in the delivery room. And he said, oh, you don't want him to suffer too, do you? And I went, uh-oh, you said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So I chose not to go with him. And I did choose a practice that was one of the few practices in the suburbs of LA, or even in the LA area, that allowed husbands in the delivery room. And so consequently, having my husband in the delivery room, we had to take childbirth classes in order for that to happen. I was in a small community hospital. And then Marge and Jay Hathaway, who you know,
Yeah.
and you know, Jay Hathaway has passed on.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to track him down and learn that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
For,
Margie.
for viewers who don't know this, Jay Hathaway is the American proponent for Bradley birth, which
Yes.
was, what was Bradley's first name? I can't.
Robert.
Robert Bradley, who was one of the pioneers in natural childbirth. And Jay, I met through the same time I met you with the Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative. So it's sad to hear. So now back to Vancouver and growing up, oldest of four. Were you like the little mother for the twins, or what?
Well, I was definitely the big sister. I don't remember that much. Of course, because she was breastfeeding. So no, I don't. I don't have all of that. Those memories of when they were really little. Although I do have some photos and stuff like that of the four of us. I have memories of us all getting in the car and going to the beach and all of that with my
Okay,
parents. Yeah.
sisters, brothers, some of each?
Pardon?
Brothers, sisters, some of each?
Yeah, the twins were a boy and a girl, and then another sister. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
one boy and
one boy in the works. Yeah, and
and
they're all
how
spread out.
are your sister and you still in contact, or your brothers and
Oh, absolutely. It's just not that often. They're the two sisters are in Arizona, and the one brother is in Southern California.
hmm
Yeah, no, we make all the right connections at the right time, just not as often as,
hmm
yeah, not that often. Should be more often though.
Well, it's great to have a mother whose your birth was not
Yes,
a dreaded horror story.
yeah.
And
Well,
what about your dad? Was he
he's no longer, no, neither of my parents are with us.
growing up? Was he around, and did he?
To a point. So I did end up, well, as a teenager, my parents split up. So, and then my mom met another wonderful man who was introduced to my mom by my best friend. Her dad was single, and my mom was single, and we were very best friends, and so we kept saying, gee, we should introduce our parents, and we did introduce our parents, and then they were the ones that were together for the rest of their lives.
Oh, great, great.
So when I talk about my dad, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And school, what was that like for you?
School, as far as going all the way to college.
Yeah, and grade school and high school.
Oh, well, yes, I was in Canada, but I remember coming to the States and then getting to that part where languages were a part of the education, and they said that I had to take Spanish, and I said, "Oh no, I speak French." Well, I didn't speak French either, so now I don't speak Spanish or French. You know, I do speak salsa, merengue, bachata, and chata. Those
Ah,
are awesome Latin dances. So and my current partner is Latin, so and I still don't speak Spanish.
ah,
Yeah, so but then so I never did take they didn't have French classes then. This was California, everything was Spanish. And so I was able to get into college with whatever French I had taken, and well, through high school and then into college. So that and actually, the reason I knew you is because my degree my bachelor's is in health science. And so, of course, you know, the wellness, which end of the wellness are you on, and the road to wellness. So I learned all about you, and then to meet you at my passionate thing about birth. And I went, wow, how awesome to meet you like
I
that.
recall now you were one of the few people that had heard of my previous career because I had switched to infant wellness at that point,
You
and
switched what?
to infant wellness
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, yes.
in
Yeah, yeah.
early 90s.
Yes, that's right.
And yeah, it was a treat to find out you'd heard of me. So um, let's go back. When did you come to California? What age were you?
Let me think what year it was. Gosh, it was it was in the 50s.
So you were
So
still in grade school, or?
I was still, yeah, exactly. I was 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So most of your schooling was in the U.S. then.
yes, yeah.
Mhm. And
Yep.
I would imagine you'd have been a cheerleader in high school. You have that in you.
Believe it or not, I ended up going to 2 different high schools. and I wasn't a cheerleader. Um, my boyfriend, who ended up being my husband, was ended up going into the Navy, and while I was in high school for Vietnam. So uh, no, I never did do the cheerleading thing.
Uh,
Would have been fun though.
yeah. And then where did you go to college?
Several colleges and in California. And then I ended up out here in Florida, and I even started a master's in public health and didn't didn't finish it. The whole public health agenda was frustrating.
Boring.
Frustrating.
That was one of the most boring years I experienced in my year of
Yeah,
options. So I
yeah.
can't blame you for dropping out of it. It was required as part of my residency, so I just put up with it.
Oh, yeah.
Would I know the colleges in Southern California, or were they in Southern?
Well, there was Cal State Northridge.
Uh-huh.
It was it wasn't Cal State. They change.
Hmm.
Um, that was the last one in California. Yeah, because I was pregnant the first time in college, and that just changed my whole life,
Yeah.
having a baby. So I left college and the corporate world and began mothering. And as a result of my awesome birth experience, which I did have a Bradley birth, and it did get filmed. Jay Hathaway is in the film industry, so he filmed the birth. And Marge and Jay Hathaway couldn't get rid of me after I had my baby, so they decided to hire me to work with them in their home office to try and launch,
Oh,
yeah, to try and launch the whole Bradley method. It was actually initially called Husband Coached Childbirth, and
right.
that's what the book was called, right? So it now morphed into the Bradley method because everybody kept trying to make it a method, and Dr. Bradley said, well, no, it's not really a method. So, and then I went to my first conference. I went to an ICEA conference as a result, and that's when I where I met Dr. Bradley. And so that was awesome. And he actually got me my first teaching job once I became a Bradley instructor. So I actually was the first certified Bradley instructor. Dr. Bradley had Rhonda Hartman, and Rhonda Hartman was his Bradley instructor, and she was a nurse. And so she was like the very first one. She was basically our model. And so anyway, we were at this conference and out to dinner, and a couple of one of the doctors from the San Fernando Valley that was really interested in getting husbands in the delivery room at that small little community hospital, and met with us for dinner. And Dr. Bradley, or he said, and it was the doctor, the OB's name was Jack Galloway. I don't know if he's around anymore, but he said, no, Jack Galloway was already doing it. My mistake. Ed Terrace was the one that came to the conference because he did on-call work for Jack Galloway that initially got husbands in the delivery room. So Ed Terrace, he's got a son now who is practicing in the Los Angeles area in obstetrics, and he's supposed to be one of those great docs, sort of like his dad was. Anyway, so this Dr. Terrace said, I would love to get husband in the delivery room and have a childbirth educator. And Dr. Bradley said, well, here she is. And he pointed at me. So I became his Bradley instructor, and then births were filmed. He went to Japan for an OB conference and brought back a big, the big days, the big, what was it? Was it after the film, like my film is in a can on 16 millimeter. The next thing after that was those big things. It was on a tape, but I forget what it was called.
Umatics, the 3/4 inch.
Yes.
Yeah.
He got one of those cameras and had it set up in the delivery room at this little hospital, and everybody's birth got to be filmed.
Ah.
Yeah, so that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So then we had these film meetings where we'd have meetings once a month, and he would come and talk. And the people who didn't mind sharing their videos, would share them, and it was very inspirational. Yeah, you're taking me back to really thinking of these things.
Yeah, say more about how they were used and for what you do differently or
No, I mean, well, yeah, birth looks different today than it did then because they were actually, oh, now you can hear my dog,
yeah.
in the delivery room. And there's another dog outside. Sorry. I forgot to warn everybody to keep the dog quiet. Anyway, can you hear me okay?
In between the bar.
Should I go get him?
Well, let's see if he quiets down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well,
So I'm actually babysitting him for my son. So I'm gonna have to give him back because I have to do a virtual doula training in a couple of weeks. So the dog's gonna go back then, so I don't have to deal with that. Anyway, no, so the camera was set back in the corner of the delivery room, and so it just got the birthing person, the laboring woman, on a delivery bed from behind. So and I think he used drapes at that time and stuff too. And the partner would lift the mom up when she was, pushing. So in any case, you really didn't see anything. You didn't see any exposed anything. So, well, as a matter of fact, speaking of exposed, so I realize I'm jumping around. My birth film that Jay Hathaway did ended up in a film of 5 births, and the film was called Childbirth for the Joy of It. And they were all natural births. And so Jay, with his connection with Hollywood, got me on 2 talk shows. And one of them was with Dr. Bradley, and the other one of them was with Regis Philbin. Remember Regis Philbin? Yeah. And anyway, it was being taped. And so they set it up to watch the video. And after the video was over, they continued with the interview, but they decided not to show the video because you could see the umbilical cord. So the next show that I was on was a great privilege to be on this show. It was live, and they did show the video. And I don't know if you remember a talk show by a beautiful woman named Maria Cole, Nat King Cole's wife.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So that was the one I was on with Dr. Bradley, and she saw the film and they showed it. And the camera panned back on her, and she had tears coming out, and they're going, cut, commercial, or whatever you do, cut. And so Nat had passed away by then, so she was reminiscing and how she would have loved to have had him there. I think she had 4 or 5 kids. And her daughter Natalie has passed away as well. I'm sure you've heard about that. So around the same time Jay Hathaway passed away, interestingly enough.
So you were really right in there in the beginning of getting the word out, and I realized.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I loved it, and well, I still love it. So I continued teaching childbirth education, moved to Atlanta because it's a second marriage, and I enjoyed having the opportunity to start anew in Atlanta, and I got to meet some wonderful midwives doing home births, and I had already gone to some home births in California as well, and got really connected with the midwives in Atlanta and doing home births, and so I started teaching home birth classes as well. So yeah, and so that was good, and then I started birth assisting with them, which was a whole nother role. then there's the midwife, and then the birth assistant. And the birth assistant assists the midwife. And then the world of doula came along.
Right.
And yeah, and so thanks to Penny Simkin and several other, John Kinnell, Marshall Klaus, and Annie Kennedy, all were the founders of Dona International. And so the word doula, I'm hearing this word doula, which I'd heard anyway because I knew about postpartum doulas. And the postpartum doulas were focused on after the baby was born. However, we know as women that women have always supported women in childbirth, that having husbands in the delivery room was new. And so women were always there for them. So come the role of the doula. And I said, I think I need to get certified in that. So I did. And then I said, I heard there was an opportunity for becoming a doula trainer. And so I did that back a long time ago, 96, I think. And so that's what I've been doing since then. I found that my passion works best for me in training doulas. And so, yeah, that's what's happening now. And this virus changes a lot about how doulas can practice. So right now, many facilities are only allowing one person in, or none, all over the world.
Really?
Yeah, so it's tough time. So doulas are practicing virtual doulaing. In fact, Penny Simkin just did a fabulous webinar on doulas at a distance. So we've got some good guidance.
So how's that work in a birthing room then? Do you have a...
Well, they have FaceTime or some other means of communicating, and there doesn't seem to be a problem with them allowing them to communicate and have their cell phone in with them. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, it works. It's better than nothing or nobody. Yeah, yeah.
I recall that you were central to organizing things. You have everyone would say, "Oh, Rae can handle that," or like the mother-friendly childbirth.
Right.
You were central to organizing that as well. So you have multiple skills in terms of working with clients and then getting things done organizationally. So
yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to organize virtual doula trainings now, which is a challenge because we do a lot of hands-on and there's group work and that yeah, and these trainings are like 25 hours and used to do them in person for 3 days. So anyway, we're all learning. It's a big learning curve at the moment. However, I'm going to end up with some new skills.
Yeah.
Using Zoom trainings, starting to use breakout rooms and all of that good stuff. So, but Kim's is a whole nother story. And that was such a special time. And as a matter of fact, I was looking through the PowerPoint presentation that was about the history of Kim's and looked back with fond memories of all the people that were involved. Of course, you were as well from the very, very beginning. I was not at that very first meeting.
You weren't? Oh.
No, I wasn't. Yeah, I know.
The next meeting in Florida the following year in '97.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you had lots of other mini meetings. There were a lot of other mini meetings after your first meeting. You had you would meet in different places and then you would all communicate through email as far as editing all the document and stuff. Yeah, you remember all of that.
Well, we pretty much had the document done with the projector. That was a new thing in Mount Madonna, where we were. But so what? I didn't know there was a PowerPoint about Kim's history. Is that online or what's?
No, it isn't. I have it right here on my desktop. You want me to show it?
Well, I'd like to see it at some point. I'm curious. So how did you get involved then?
I got involved because and I don't remember who it was that told me that these meetings were happening. It's a really good question. I don't know if it was Hency Gower. It could have been Hency or Suzanne Arms, who mentioned it to me and then sent me the invitation to participate. And I did. And then that's when the whole designation thing, you were on my designation committee,
Right.
right? Yeah. Well, that's how we advanced is now that we have the document out there and it's been published and it's being promoted, because all these organizations, Lamaze and ICEA and AWAN and NARM and MANA and everybody putting it out there.
I got
And
this this collection of organizations have more abbreviations. I had to, it took me
oh,
forever to learn them.
yes, that's true. Well, the Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative, yes, we had a lot of original signers and then we had followers.
Mhm.
So all of these organizations kept, tweaking, and all had to be approved for everything that went in the document. And I remember one of the ones that was really a challenge to get in was the one on circumcision, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a battle that Ray Castellino and Suzanne and I and Jim Prescott were. It was at lunchtime, right before lunch at the meeting, when the Jewish contingency were objecting to it. And then we broke for lunch, and I wound up sitting next to Ina May. And,
Oh,
well, Steve's circumcised, and he doesn't think it makes a difference. And I said, how would he know? So a bunch of us did some politicking at lunch, and then when we came back, it turned out that Marshall Klaus had taken off for the afternoon, and he was one of the main objectors. And and they weren't planning to bring it up again. So I said, wait a minute, we haven't finished this, and we got the meeting coordinator to put it back on the table. And it was Penny Simkin that came up with a compromise of discourages circumcision except for religious purposes, and they went with that one. So
yeah.
that's how it got in the original one. Then they did the seventh grade language version and dropped it all together.
Really?
I noticed it was missing in the drafts, so I got a hold of what was his name? It had just come from Denmark, the doctor who died, WHO doctor.
Oh, yes. Marsden Wagner.
Martin Wagner. I let him know, and he came on board, and with his clout, we got it back in.
Ah,
They tried to get rid of it then.
well, the low literacy, I was involved in that being published, and I don't think it was taken out because it was still 10 steps.
Well, we got it back in, but they were planning to drop it.
Oh, oh, I see. Okay.
And that's when a group of us yelped, and Marsden had the clout to say, wait a minute, this got to be in there. So,
Yes.
but then I must have met you in Orlando then when we had the meeting in the winter of 96, 97. I remember driving down from Virginia. We just moved to Virginia. And
Yeah.
I met Sharon Humanick there, and
Oh, lots
that
of
was a meeting in Los Angeles area that where I walked to somebody's screen door, going out.
Oh, I wasn't at that one. Which one was that?
Must have been about the third year. I don't remember.
Oh, San Diego.
Yeah, it might have been San Diego. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the good old days. So.
Yeah. Yes, those were the good old days. Yeah, things have definitely changed. And I know I sent you the stuff on how Kim's ended up in breaking away from the international group, because the international group, and it was all agreed upon, because Kim's, they felt, was more North America centered. And then the international initiative came out of a big survey that was done with 164 different organizations throughout the world contributing to it. And Rae Davies Floyd was huge and instrumental in pulling that all together. And so that was launched in 2008. And then now just last year, that was the international organization was the International Mother Baby Childbirth Organization, has now merged with FIGO, the Federation of International Gynecologists and Obstetricians, and a lot of more compromises were made. And there was no mention of circumcision. Of course, internationally, it's not as much of an issue.
Not an issue outside of the U.S. and South Korea. Yeah.
Right.
So I hadn't heard of FIGO. What is that? A pretty mainstream?
Oh yeah, FIGO is the Federation of International Gynecologists and Obstetricians, and so that's the ACOG of outside the United States.
Yeah, and they actually going along with it. That's
yes. Well, it took a lot of work. One of the past presidents is a Canadian, and we had some pretty active Canadian, or a very active Canadian on our board. And consequently, she was very, she wrote a book on VBAC, Helene Van Boncourt. And see, I lost my French completely. I can't even pronounce her name. And she was instrumental, and along with several other people, to get at that time the FIGO president interested in our initiative, in the International Mother Baby Childbirth Initiative. And so that started the snowball effect, I guess. And then Deborah Pascali-Bonero was the chair of IMBCO and still is. And she was determined that we were going to get that connection. And it was a long time, took a long time, a lot of work, and it's been made. And we've kept IMBCO as our independent, still a little independent, just in case it loses its original intention or their current agreed upon intention. So.
What's your connection with that? Are you?
I am the administrative director, not with the new initiative. The new initiative is called the International Childbirth Initiative, or EC, ICI-EC. And it's great. They have their own website now too, and they have their own board of directors, and Deborah is on there. So is Kathy Hirschdorfer from our board is on the new FIGO board as well. She's a midwife in the Netherlands who does amazing work. I mean, our international board is amazing. We have got Sue Down, who is, Roberta's trying to call me right now. I called Roberta. Should I say hello? I called Roberta to say, hey, have you been interviewed by Jack yet?
She's on my list, but haven't been in touch with her for a long time. So I'm just starting to move into the infant wellness component. I've been wrapping up the holistic docs because I wanted to get a vignette into one of their conferences. And I've still got a few of them left, but you're one of the first of the infant wellness. I did Suzanne Arms and Barbara Hotelling. And,
good.
but I've got about 30 more names to go through.
Wow, I bet you do.
Who would I most enjoy? It was you. So.
Oh, well, hopefully nobody else heard that. So ATLC was your first infant organization, right?
And it went pretty strong for about 4 or 5 years. And then we tried taking it to the next level and we couldn't make it. Our fundraiser didn't follow through. But we revived it about 5 years ago when we got a bequest. It's still pretty small, and we're looking for new board members and president and that sort of thing, because we're all aging. But it's primarily been funding a project of Pam Leo's, the Book Fairy Pantry project, of getting books to families that don't have children's books, which is a large 1 out of 5 families have no books.
Oh, wow.
It's shocking. And also my project of dealing with what we're now calling relationship postpartum abandonment syndrome. The phenomenon of having children destroys most marriages in nuclear families. So,
Yeah, I know. I remember that now. Thanks for the reminder on that.
but how many countries are involved in FIGO and ICE?
Well, oh gosh, see, we haven't had a board call for a while, so I don't, well, this virus isn't helping. It's delaying everything. Um, we have like over 100 requests from all over the world um, for facilities to become recognized as an EC compliant site, so to speak. I'm not using the right terminology because I we need to have another board call to get all caught up on all of that happening. It's been, the launch with FIGO has been very impressive, uh, especially for the hospitals. So, whereas we didn't have that behind us with the INBCO. But now having FIGO changes changes it quite a bit.
Are these 100 requests from a wide variety of countries? Is it mainly
Oh yeah.
or
Oh, I wish I had the stats for you. You might want to interview Deborah Pascali-Bonero.
for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she definitely can fill you in on all that. I'm ashamed to say I don't know that all. We did have some facilities that were working on designation with INBCO. There was one in Austria, Canada. Let me think of them all now. I have to think about them. The one in Canada did the most, and and yeah, various other countries, and in Brazil, and geez, it's a shame I'm not recalling all of the facilities right away. However, it's all on our website at inbci.org.
Great.
Yeah.
Put a link in the narrative. So I remember our efforts to designate mother friendly back in the
Yes.
90s were difficult to.
Yeah.
But it looks like with these successive iterations, things are finally taken off, and there's an interest and demand.
Yeah, what's really interesting is before you called, I was looking at that PowerPoint and I was reading through the MFCI steps, again, the Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative steps, those 10 steps. And it's amazing. They have carried over even to the international initiative. The international initiative has added, or the FIGO one has added, or the EC, I should say, not FIGO, EC, ICI. Stuff related to having emergency and wellness on availability and then too about staffing and well, anyway, just added some new stuff. And of course, the whole respectful maternity care component was step 1 in the INBCI, and now step 1 also in the EC, because that's the most important thing, is the respectful maternity care. Yeah. And yeah, it was in our preamble. It just wasn't a step with the MFCI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just fill in a few questions back. You had your first baby in the middle of your college.
Yes.
And that was interrupted, as I would expect, and then more kids. What I don't even know.
Yeah, I did. I ended up having 2 more. Well, I had 1 more after that, and that they're like 2 years apart. And then we had, oh my gosh, we had that earthquake in California, the one in Northridge. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, well, it was a pretty big one, pretty major one in Northridge. Yeah.
I was in Australia by then, I think.
Oh, yeah, you could have been. Yeah, it was 7 something, and it was pretty bad. And I was pregnant, and I lost that baby.
Oh,
And so I don't like earthquakes.
yeah.
Anyway, and so then I had my son, and and a divorce. And so then I remained single for 7 years, and then met somebody else, believe it or not, by the pool at a conference. It was a knapsack conference. Do you remember knapsack? The National Association of Parents and Professionals for Safe Alternatives in Childbirth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's where I met him. He was a lifeguard at the pool in law school. So, and then we had a baby and we had a home birth.
Mm.
Yeah. And it was an interesting home birth because this was Florida and it was before Florida had licensing. However, I did hear that there was a home birth midwives practicing. So I contacted them. And in the meantime, I contacted a midwife that I'd worked with in California that was a labor and delivery nurse. And I said, I need you to be out here and be at my birth. And so she got in the car with her son and drove across the country. And she didn't make it before I went into labor. And I wasn't off on my due dates. I just cook my babies faster than others. And so it was up to my husband, however, that I had gotten a job with a doctor and I had sort of put him on call, and he reminds me of you now that I think about it. That's why I liked him so much. So I was working for him and I just happened to mention if he would asked if he would be on call just in case my backup didn't make it. You know, the midwife coming, she had to drive some distance to get to me, and then the other one coming from California. So I had two midwives, so he was my third backup. Well, the first one, like I said, was too far away, and the second one was not going to make it. She says, the way you sound, you're not going to make it. And so I called the other doc, and he lived on a boat. So it was kind of interesting. I had to call the dock master because this was before cell phones. I had to call the dock master, and the dock master went and rattled the boat, and he got up and came over, and he did everything I told him to do. I had my birth kit because I had my birth kit from practicing with midwives in Atlanta because I had just moved to Florida and really didn't know anybody. And so he was great. He, like I said, just did everything. And my husband was used to using the fetoscope. So before he even got there, he listened to the baby and all of that stuff. And he said, it all sounds the same. And so the doctor made it just as I'm crowning. And anyway, so it was great. He handed me my baby. It was wonderful. And the interesting thing about that doctor is that it was his very first birth. He was a podiatrist.
Ah.
So, yes. Anyway, yeah. So, not many people can claim that. So it was great, though. I'm glad I got my home birth.
Yeah, it's vastly underrated and misunderstood. So,
Or you said something. You misunderstood something.
I was afraid you froze there, but I'm not sure if we're recording well or not. But anyway, so you just got into Florida, and then you've been there, what, 30 years?
Yeah, ended up moving back to California for a short while, and then and even Atlanta, and then 10 years ago, yeah, I did have another divorce. So that was just two, no more.
Same for me.
Yeah, okay, right.
Um,
And I met your lovely.
yes, yes. Well, nothing like geriatric romance. It was 68 when we met, so, 8 years ago. But so you're happily partnered there and
Yeah.
uh, doing great work. And any other loose ends that I've missed or that you'd like to add to the?
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. There's a lot of history with the three or many organizations that we talked about, and I know I'm missing a lot of the details. Got my brain going in all sorts of different directions these
Well,
days.
it's more
Uh,
about you than the organizations. It's, I want to, and I've captured, the essence of who you are and why why you've been so valuable. So, um, where do you think uh, things are going with home birth? Is it we still
oh,
to the what the culture is still not getting it? What are your thoughts on the future?
yeah. Well, the interesting thing about this virus, COVID-19, technically, is that women are not wanting to have their babies in the hospital. So the home birth midwives all over the country are very busy.
Really?
And so are the birth centers. Yes. So that's a positive, very, very positive thing. However, they're not able to service everybody. Florida is the state I'm most familiar with. I sat on the board of directors for the Florida School of Traditional Midwifery for 5 years, and it's a great school, and it's one of the MEEC accredited ones. And so they have a great 3-year program for licensed midwives, and Florida has a great licensed midwife program, and then they all become CPMs, certified professional midwives, and which is what Ina May was. And now Ina May's state is also a licensed state. And so they're still going at the farm too. I hope you're going to interview somebody there. Anyway,
Anna May herself, but
yeah, I don't think she's at the farm anymore. Um, yeah, not sure where she is. And so anyway, the births that are happening that way, Florida, even before the virus or the pandemic, um, Florida had a pretty high home birth rate. It was, I thought, somewhere around 2%,
really,
which is higher than the national average. National average is a little less. And probably because we have this school here. And so more Floridian women have easier access to getting licensed in the state. So, and of course the data though, all the data is on the outcomes for midwives is phenomenal. So some really good data has come out, and you just can't be refuted that it is one of the safest places to have a baby with, under the circumstances of good health, low risk, and they have strict protocol that they have to follow. And so the midwives have to follow, and they have to, the client has to be within 30 minutes of a facility. And like I said, they have to remain low risk. And so I call it, when I do a doula training, I say, it's a gift to have a home birth. It's a privilege to have a home birth. And the gift, because you have the gift of health, and the privilege that we have is we have a lot of midwives and across the board. And there's a lot of diversity in the midwifery field as well. So it's serving across the board really well. So, yeah, a lot's happened. Doulas are, in some of the hospitals due to the pandemic, have put out an announcement that doulas are an essential part of the team. So if they're only allowing one person, that could be the partner, and then also the doula, because she's an essential to the team.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that part's positive.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Now we've made lots and lots of strides. And water birth, I mean, Barbara Harper, remember Barbara Harper?
Oh yeah, she's somewhere.
Yeah.
She's still in Florida, I think.
She is still in Florida. She might not be right now. She travels all over the place.
Yeah, she's China more than she's in Florida.
Yeah, interestingly enough. I hope she's staying put right now. I think she is, because she actually did a little webinar about supporting under these circumstances. So in any case, birth has just become at home. This is what everybody does. They pretty much everyone's having a home water birth, the ones or birth center. Where in the beginning, when water birth was being introduced, the home birth midwives didn't jump right on board. It took them a little while. Just like they just didn't jump on board with doulas either, because they were saying, oh, doulas, oh, you don't need a doula. You have me. I'm a doula. And then they started hiring doulas to be birth assistants. So then they were saying, oh, our birth assistants are doulas, and which wasn't the case, because that's a whole different hat, being a birth assistant. Yeah. So now, however, with the confusion with women choosing not to want to have their babies at home, in a hospital, they're going and asking doulas to be at their home birth because they can't get a midwife. And so the doulas, of course, are not going to go because they're not skilled birth attendants and they do absolutely nothing medical. So that's been an interesting situation. In fact, I have a doula group that wrote me and said, look at this email that I got. Someone said she wasn't happy about the OB and she didn't want to go to the hospital and she wanted the doula to be with her. And the doula say, no, I'm not doing that.
No,
we want to have safe outcomes.
Is the term free birth?
Yeah.
Is that picking up with the shortage of OBs and home births? Do you know anything about that world?
Well, yeah, free birth or unassisted childbirth is another term. So it just depends on who's using the terminology. Unassisted childbirth is, well, same with free birth. They're having no birth attendants at all. And I'll never forget Ina May at a conference. It was a conference with midwives where she stood up and she asked the question to all the midwives, why are these women having unassisted births when they have access to midwives, to skilled midwives, when they have us? And I thought, yeah, that's a really good question you have to ask. And so it was and it still is, I believe, a trend. I haven't heard much about it lately, except that, some midwives were not necessarily practicing the way the women were wanting. They wanted hands-off birth. They didn't want to have vaginal exams. They really wanted labor alone with their partner. So midwives were saying, that's fine, you can labor alone, I'll be in another other room, and you don't have to have vaginal exams, and we're just gonna come in and check on the baby and see how the baby's doing, and you just do your own thing. So like I said, I'm not up to date on how many unassisted births there are.
Yeah, probably there aren't many stats on it either, but I was just wondering with the shortage of home birth staff, whether that was reappearing.
It could be. You're right. It could be. Nothing has come across my desk to that point yet, though. So yeah, it could be for sure.
What was that?
Hadn't thought about that.
Marilyn something who wrote that book way back when, the red hardback book on her name.
Who was that?
Marilyn something was the woman who
Oh.
wrote about it. But,
Oh, about free birth?
Yeah.
Oh.
And was Janine Parvati, she was a proponent of it too, I think.
No, I thought she was in a midwifery.
Yeah, I don't remember. Well, any other loose ends as we wrap up here?
I don't know. We've covered a lot.
Well, it's been a delight to fill in some of the gaps in my knowledge of your history and the important role you've played in helping shape the future of normal birth.
Oh, well, thank you. I didn't necessarily think of it like that. It's just my passion, and
Yeah.
I am definitely committed to it. That's for sure. I love doing doula trainings. So.
And I didn't know about the doula aspect. That one of my best friends in Australia trains doulas, Anna Watts, who I'll be interviewing too. And
Oh, good.
he's doing trainings or has been doing training to working on virtual trainings too. So
Oh, yes. Yeah, that name sounds very familiar to me. I like to keep up with what's going on down under.
yeah,
Have you been back lately?
pardon.
Have you been back there lately?
I just escaped there last week. I was finishing
Really?
up. I actually left a month early. I'm normally there during the winters here, but they were closing the Queensland border, and that's where the airports are. So the day before the day they closed it, that at midnight, I got to the Brisbane airport, and then they canceled all the flights. I had 3 canceled flights. I spent 2 days in Sydney and finally got one of the last Virgin flights to LA. So I got out in triple time.
Whoa, you sure did. Well, good thing.
Otherwise, Yvonne and I'd be separated for God knows how long. So,
Right.
yeah.
Oh my. Well, good. I'm glad you came back. It's like
Yeah.
me in one of the hurricanes. I had a flight scheduled when they did the total evacuation, where you mandatory evacuation, and I already had a flight scheduled, and it was the last one out. So it worked.
Well, thank you again. This has been a delight. And,
Has been. Thank
I'm going
you.
to end the recording now.
Okay. Bye.
Uh,